Ryu Hanbin, a young man, suddenly finds himself battling a beast in the barren lands of a world called Thelha-Rathna. He has no memory of how he arrived there. The only thought dominating his mind is survival. Confronted by a vicious beast dog, he smashes it with a rock, believing it would finish the creature off. But to his horror, the monster rises again, relentlessly pressing the one-sided fight. Just as he's about to be pushed off a cliff, the system activates, revealing the creature's identity. A hell dog, the weakest monster in Thelha-Rathna. Its strength equals that of an ordinary, unarmed adult man. The system also explains that players can level up by defeating such creatures or stronger monsters in general. Confused, Hanbin wonders how everything spiraled out of control, even questioning whether he's trapped inside some twisted fantasy game. Before going further, let's rewind. Hanbin used to wake up past noon every day. Only 3 months had passed since he was discharged from mandatory military service, and he believed he deserved time to rest and relax. He once thought that once his service was complete, he could easily reintegrate into society. Yet, the last 3 months had been nothing but a blur of emptiness. Nothing had changed, not even during the 2 years in the army. On a seemingly ordinary day, while wasting time like usual, he was abruptly pulled into a strange void. Echoing voices filled the emptiness. Multiple entities conversed among themselves, speaking of the chosen ones, hinting that the few humans before them were selected out of the world's 7 billion. Suddenly, one voice suggested transmitting guidelines to all players, while another objected, claiming it felt too artificial. Hanbin was baffled. Who were these voices if not gods? The first entity replied that the guidelines were essential, offering motivation and clarity since they had already been tested with earlier chosen candidates. The second voice finally initiated the transmission, only to accidentally make an error when sending Hanbins. They brushed it off, claiming a single mistake didn't matter, and with that, Chosen One number 398 was hurled into the world of Thelha-Rathna. Sometime later, Hanbin is shown brutally hacking away at the corpse of the Helldog. He gains a mere 13 experience points for killing a level 1 monster, but the moment shakes him to the core. Memories of his discharge flood back. What would happen to his parents now? He bitterly regrets never having dated a girl. The thought lingers that anyone could have been chosen. Why him, when so many dodge military service? A system alert interrupts his thoughts, warning that, with his current stats, his survival rate in Thelha-Rathna is below 5%. It even suggests an alternate option, to end his life. Furious at the entities who sent him, Hanbin wonders if dying here would send him back home. But deep down, he knows the truth. They wouldn't have summoned chosen ones just to return them later. Accepting his grim reality, he resolves not to give up. The system then prompts him to select a skill class. Fighting barehanded isn't possible, so he searches for a way to fight from a distance. Spotting the magician class, he quickly attempts to choose it, but the system rejects him for lack of aptitude. Frustrated, he tries magic swordsman and priest, only to be denied again. Despite his reluctance, he is forced to select the warrior class. Determined to adapt, he decides to fight from afar using a spear. But another system error occurs, equipping him instead with a long sword. Enraged, Hanbin swears not to follow the will of those strange entities, but above all, he wants to survive. And so, his never-ending struggle for strength begins. When he tries swinging the blade, he fails miserably, too weak to wield it properly. Days pass. It has now been a week since Hanbin's arrival in Thelha-Rathna. Countless times he has begged the system to tell him how to return home, but it never answers, whether because of a bug or simply indifference. Regardless, one thing remains constant. If he wants to live, he must keep fighting. And the only enemies he's faced so far are the relentless Helldogs. If there's one lesson Hanbin has learned since arriving in this world, it's that the Helldogs evolve too. He notices how these beasts have grown more cautious around him. No matter how hard he fights to survive, the battles keep dragging him down. Just as he adapts to their movements, they also adapt to his. When he tries to pull off an unexpected strike, the Helldog he's facing reads his movements perfectly and dodges. It leaps at him, but Hanbin counters with a mid-air blow, killing it instantly. The reward, 22 experience points, pushes his total to 282. He managed the kill using Stab, a skill he unlocked after reaching level 2. The guidelines prove useful in their own way. By browsing through them, Hanbin gains new knowledge about the world, even discovering that Helldog meat and blood contain essential fats, amino acids, moisture, carbohydrates, fiber, and minerals. But despite their ferocity, their claws and teeth dull quickly, making them useless. From all this, Hanbin concludes that the world is artificially constructed, and there must be a purpose behind his arrival. He recalls the mention of 7 billion candidates and wonders where the rest of the chosen ones ended up. His thoughts are interrupted when the guideline reveals that he can leave the Rock Mountains, his current starting zone, once he reaches level 5. It explains that the Rock Mountains are a beginner's area, safer than most, with efficient experience gains. Low-level monsters roam here, and within safe zones, enemies are stat-matched to the players. The system commands him to meet with the other chosen ones, and at level 20, he will be able to complete the Thelha-Rathna map and journey to the Ulna continent. The flood of information overwhelms him. He asks what his true purpose here is, but the system fails to respond, citing an error. What troubles him most isn't just that monsters level up, but whether he can ever return home. Distrustful of the guidelines, he resolves to escape the Rock Mountains to uncover the truth. In the meantime, he resumes hunting hell dogs, but as his strength grows, so does theirs. Another 22 experience pushes him to the threshold for leveling up again, this time unlocking Side Slash. Yet every victory demands blood, injury, and recovery. By the 27th day, Hanbin has slain countless hell dogs, cycling through a brutal routine of battle, wounds, eating, and rest. His skill set expands, stab, side slash, and vertical slash, and his body begins to reflect his stat gains. Even the two-handed longsword, which once felt impossible to wield, now swings with ease. Hard work shows tangible results in this world. Just as he feels progress, a shocking system message arrives. He has been reset to level 1. At first, he dismisses it as a bug, but the reality quickly sets in. Surprisingly, his stats remain untouched. Trying to look on the bright side, he assumes that because he's in a starter zone, the Hell Dogs must also reset to level 1. If that were true, he could rack up stats even faster, but he's wrong. The Hell Dogs keep growing stronger regardless of their displayed level. Hanbin refuses to give in. He continues to risk his life with each fight, convinced that one more attempt will finally break the cycle. But as the years pass, the truth becomes more cruel. He is trapped in an endless loop. 7 long years spent reliving levels 1 through 4, over and over. Chosen ones don't age, and thanks to accelerated healing, his body recovers from any wound within a single day. Yet no matter how much he fights, he can't unlock new skills beyond the 3 he already has: stab, side slash, and vertical slash. His stats rise, but so do the monster's strength. The system seems determined to pit him against stronger and stronger foes, all under the guise of forcing him to grow. To Hanbin, it often feels like the monsters only exist to be killed, though the same could easily be said about him. Meanwhile, the mysterious voices finally complete the guideline transmission to the Chosen Ones, calling this mission Jiren Latna's 5th operation. One voice remarks that it has grown accustomed to this process, as it's already their 5th time starting such a mission. They believe that even if it's another world, players should typically take no longer than a year to clear it. This time, they expect some truly capable players to emerge. While inspecting, one of the entities stumbles upon a broken world and realizes Hanbin is still logged into it. Lost in thought, Hanbin dreams of being back home and almost drifts into sleep. Half asleep, his finger nearly selects the alternate guideline option, ending his own life. He jolts awake, only to be hit with the crushing truth. It's been about 10 years since he first began slaughtering hell dogs. He once even fell from a cliff and survived, proving that fall damage doesn't apply to him. And yet, despite countless battles and endless training, he remains stuck at level 1, always regressing just as he's about to hit level 5. The temptation to press that fatal option grows stronger with each passing day. Though despair lingers, Hanbin forces himself to stay composed. Agonizing over it won't change anything. Still, the question haunts him. If he does choose death, would it send him back home? Since he might never escape, he decides to at least make his time meaningful. Eventually, he stops keeping track of how many years have passed. Was it 5? 7? He no longer knows. During that time, he even found small distractions, tasks that made survival slightly more bearable. He built a house out of stone and debris, forcing himself to live with patience rather than rage. But when a colossal helldog destroyed the home he spent 3 years constructing, Hanbin swore vengeance. These massive beasts are loud, unpleasant, and their meat tastes terrible. Yet, after fighting them repeatedly, he discovered the best way to defeat them. They always open with a devastating area attack that's impossible to dodge, so he braces himself and endures the impact. Shocked to see him withstand it, the monster follows up with thunderbolts, beams of light, and bursts of fire. The pain is immense, but Hanbin counters by raising enormous earthen walls before finishing with a crushing blow. Though never truly skilled with a blade and unable to unlock new abilities, Hanbin's endless use of his three techniques, stab, side slash, and vertical slash, led him to merge them into one powerful attack. He calls it cross impact. It isn't a true system skill, yet no monster has survived its devastating force. Meanwhile, the entity responsible for the original guideline error discovers Hanbin's situation. To its horror, Hanbin has been trapped in Thelharathna for 22 years, while the other chosen ones have been advancing through different areas of Latna. The entity panics, knowing it cannot explain this failure to its superiors, nor can it simply kill Hanbin. After agonizing over the issue, it decides to erase both Hanbin's records and the broken world itself. At that moment, Hanbin sits chewing on another Helldog meal. He remembers the strange breeze he always felt whenever he reached level 4. He longs for real food, for human interaction, and even wonders about his lifespan in this cursed place. Yet, despite everything, he holds on to a fragile optimism that one day, he'll escape. Suddenly, the ground trembles. The entity begins striking the very fabric of Thelharathna, intent on erasing it. Since it believes Hanbin is still at level 4, it assumes he will die anyway. But as Hanbin watches the destruction unfold, a notification appears. The Thelharathna region has been completed. The system initiates the transfer of chosen ones to their designated levels. Elsewhere, a dragon stirs, disturbed by the arrival of otherworldly demons. After 22 years of torment, Hanbin finds himself in a new world. The once familiar red sky, where the sun neither rose nor set, the lifeless trees, and the rocky mountains vanish. He opens his eyes to the Saw Forest in the Greyut Kingdom, on the northern continent of Latna. Though he doesn't know what's happening, he knows one thing for certain: this isn't home. Still, it's far better than those cursed mountains. Strangely enough, upon arrival, his level immediately jumps to 5, and he gains access to a new ability, communication. Hanbin recalls that, according to the guidelines, he was supposed to reach level 20 before setting foot on the Elena continent. Now that he's already here at level 5, he wonders if the system is still bugged. A new guideline window suddenly appears, presenting him with a final mission: eliminate one of the 6 goddesses of Latna. The rewards are staggering: eternal youth, immortality, the chance to return to Earth with his stats intact, and even 3 wishes granted. Another message lists conditions for the quest, warning him to keep his true identity hidden from the people of this world. His first objective is to register with the Hunters Guild in the corporate city of Onres. Before he can act, a dragon arrives, cursing him as a filthy, otherworldly demon. Hanbin prepares to fight, but his sword is lying across the river on the opposite shore. With no time to fetch it, he charges barehanded. To his own shock, his punch sends the massive dragon flying. Here the story briefly shifts into the dragon's own voice. Her name is Efer, once a proud mount of the Dragon Knights of the Exrad Kingdom. She had been their greatest treasure until tragedy struck. The spoiled prince demanded to ride her, but fell during flight and died. The knight who raised and trained her was executed, and Efer fled with the help of sympathetic comrades. Exiled and heartbroken, she took refuge in the forest, where she encountered countless otherworldly humans. Though she never killed them, her mercy backfired. Soon hunters came after her in droves. Forced to defend herself, she was driven to hunt the outsiders she once spared. Now, face to face with Hanbin, she clarifies that she isn't a true dragon, but a wyvern. Dragons have 4 legs with wings on their shoulders, while wyverns' wings replace their forelegs. Defeated, she begs for mercy. Hanbin refuses, demanding to know how she recognized him as otherworldly. She explains that while she cannot tell from appearance alone, she knows because outsiders' bodies vanish when they die, something ordinary Latnians do not. Since Latnians rarely enter this forest, it was clear to her what he was. This realization unsettles Hanbin. If no one can tell his true nature from appearance alone, perhaps his secret is safer than he thought. He then asks if this is the Saw Forest of the Greyut Kingdom. Efer corrects him. The Greyut Forest was destroyed long ago. This land is now part of the Exrad Kingdom. Frustrated, Hanbin curses the guidelines for being outdated. Efer pleads again for forgiveness, but Hanbin bitterly reminds her she could have avoided all this by simply staying out of his way. She admits that she attacked because she believed him to be a demon. His rage flares, but she blurts out a shocking claim. It was the goddess herself who labeled otherworldly humans as demons. Hanbin's anger falters into curiosity. He demands more details. Efer explains that otherworldly humans began appearing in Latna 40 years ago. At first, relations between them and the natives were peaceful, but soon, The outsiders started killing Latnians to raise their levels. The strongest among them gathered together, forming an organization known as the Great Earth, whose purpose was nothing less than to slay the goddesses. These humans were terrifyingly powerful, able to grow stronger by endlessly killing. At their peak, they were led by a man who reached level 100. The continent had no way to stop them, until its four legendary heroes struck back. Beryl the Sword King, Zenobia the Archmage, Garhon the Terrible, and Holian, the transcendentalist of life and death, annihilated the outsiders in a single campaign. Afterward, the six goddesses blessed the land to prevent such threats from returning. From then on, Earthlings were branded otherworldly demons, said to have forged contracts with the wicked demon god, and were swiftly executed on sight. Hanbin, enraged at her words, snaps back that he was never a willing invader. He was kidnapped, stranded, and left to rot for decades on a cursed mountain, hardly the demon they claim him to be. When Hanbin finally makes it out, he is warned that if his true identity is ever revealed, the entire continent would turn against him. Effer claims all of this began before she was even born. Hanbin declares that he doesn't care whether he has to strike a deal with the goddesses or even serve under them. He will kill the demon god and return to Earth alive. But to protect his secret, he tells her he can't risk leaving anyone who knows the truth. She begs for mercy, swearing she'll never speak a word and will live quietly as a wyvern, pretending to be nothing more than a beast. Despite her pleas, Hanbin shows no pity. 5 days later, he leaves the Sada forest and approaches a towering castle wall stretching across the horizon. This is Onres City, a massive settlement in the northern Exrad kingdom, bustling with people. Close by lies the Sada forest itself, as well as a dungeon on the Ifon plains where endless monsters spawn. Within the city sits the Onres Hunter Guild, a place where countless hunters risk their lives in hopes of fortune. Some who come here are seasoned hunters, others are beginners, and some are even otherworldly beings in disguise. As Hanbin steps inside the guild, his imposing presence instantly stuns the room. Conversations stop, hunters stare, and whispers spread. Ignoring the chatter, he walks directly to the counter and calmly tells the receptionist he wants to register as a hunter, drawing even more shocked looks. A flashback reveals the truth. He never actually killed Effer. Instead, he made a deal with her. He explained that, even if his face didn't give him away, his lack of local clothing or equipment would raise suspicion. Though hesitant at first, convinced he would kill her anyway, she eventually agreed to help. Hanbin reminded her that she was already a wanted creature, and the chances of her running around exposing him were slim. Besides, after decades alone, he relished finally having a real conversation with another living being. Effer, touched by his words, remembered the peaceful days she once shared with otherworldly humans. She gave him clothes, though they fit tightly, and warned him never to take them off in public. When he asked about the goddesses, she explained that they rarely meet anyone, not even Latnians. Only the 4 heroes or those who accomplish great deeds are granted their presence and blessings. The safest route, she advised, was to become a hunter who slays dungeon monsters born of the demon god Ormlus. Through gestures, Hanbin pointed at his guideline, trying to show her that it also instructed him to become a hunter. But she saw nothing. That's when he realized the guidelines are visible only to otherworldly humans. He admitted that his own system was broken, which left her even more confused. She explained that hunters lead freer lives, and it isn't unusual for them to have high levels. That's why otherworlders often pose as hunters to conceal their identities. She urged him not to act like a stranger in this land. Now, standing inside the guild, Hanbin feels waves of nervousness and anxiety. His body won't relax. The receptionist gathers the necessary paperwork, and he's officially registered as a member of the Onres Hunter Guild. He silently thanks himself for ignoring the guidelines' suggestion to say he was from some western backwoods. Following Effer's advice, he instead claimed to be from North Campbell, as though he had transferred from another guild. Even so, the receptionist remains skeptical. Her shock deepens when she learns this enormous man is only now registering, his physique rivaling veteran hunters. Around the hall, people start growing wary of him, and Hanbin wonders if he's already made a mistake. When the receptionist instructs him to place his hand on the measuring stone, his suspicion flares. He wonders if this is some kind of trap. Should he prepare to fight? Yet the local hunters haven't attacked, meaning they aren't certain he's an outsider. The receptionist assures him that the stone is simply for verification, standard procedure for every new recruit. Still, Hanbin keeps his guard up, just in case. Hanbin worries that if the guild discovers his secret, he'll never get the chance to meet the goddesses. But fleeing would look just as suspicious, and destroying the place outright would only expose him further. Left with no other choice, he places his hand on the measuring stone, praying it won't betray him. To his relief, the results appear favorable, at least at first. The receptionist announces that his stats are heroic level, stunning the room. But then the truth hits. He had only been dreaming. In reality, the measuring stone shows him as nothing more than a level 5 swordsman. The entire guild bursts into laughter. The receptionist, embarrassed by her own reaction, apologizes. She explains that most people registering from remote villages turn out to be otherworldly humans, and if his level had been higher, they would have suspected the same of him. Local hunters chime in, mocking him further, claiming real otherworlders always start at level 20 before pretending to join the guild. Trying to keep his composure, Hanbin proceeds with the process. The receptionist requests a registration fee of 300x, around 3 million Korean won. Luckily, he had borrowed 400x from Effer, promising to repay her without realizing its true value. His trembling hands draw more laughter from the hunters, who point out that real otherworlders are always wealthy. Saddened, Hanbin quietly accepts his new badge. It bears both his name, Eric Garin, and his rank as a beginner hunter. The receptionist warns him that replacing a lost badge costs 80x, and he'll need to return once he levels up to upgrade his status. Despite the ridicule, Hanbin stays determined. This is where his real journey begins, and he vows to make his name known in the hunter world. He immediately requests a dungeon mission. Before the receptionist can respond, a smug voice cuts in. A boastful hunter warns him not to rush in, unless he wants to end up as monster food with his pathetic level 5. The receptionist identifies the man as Lauda, one of the guild's top hunters. Through their conversation, Hanbin learns that dungeon monsters have been multiplying, spilling out into nearby homes. While Lauda seems reluctant to get involved, Hanbin notices his level, 27, the same as Effer's. He suspects Lauda's arrogance comes from being the strongest in the guild, but decides he has no interest in clashing with someone so conceited. The receptionist suggests Hanbin join Lauda's party, since soloing a dungeon is nearly impossible. She advises that he take on smaller tasks while learning under experienced hunters. Hanbin is disgusted by the thought of working alongside someone so obnoxious. Lauda proudly refuses anyway, claiming his party already recruited a new member. That member steps forward, Ice, a self-proclaimed level 25 mage. But Hanbin's guideline flashes, showing her real level is 37. Surprised, he decides not to question it, assuming she has her reasons for hiding her strength. When she glances at him sideways, he quickly averts his eyes. Just as he resigns himself to being excluded, Lauda arrogantly relents, saying he'll take the level 5 insect only as a personal favor to the receptionist Suguri. Hanbin bites back his irritation, keeping calm. Lauda pushes further, mocking him openly before reaching for the sword strapped to Hanbin's back. But the weapon doesn't budge. Hanbin finally draws it himself, the massive blade shaking the guild hall as he effortlessly wields its weight. Hunters gape as Lauda hangs helplessly, gripping the sword in disbelief. From the crowd, a man steps forward, observing the scene. He comments that with a physique like Hanbin's, he could easily handle level 10 monsters. Lauda snaps at him, calling him Berkman and telling him to stay out of it. Berkman ignores him, focusing only on Hanbin. Pointing at the oversized sword that's tearing up the guild floor, he warns Hanbin that if he keeps causing damage, everyone inside will turn against him. Though meant as a friendly warning, Hanbin quickly clarifies he has no intention of fighting anyone, afraid the guild might expel him. Lauda, shaken by how easily Hanbin swings the massive blade, still mocks him, insisting no party would ever accept a low-level swordsman like him. Inside, Hanbin admits his weakness. He's only level 5, broke from registration fees, and trapped in a world where strength is everything. But deep down, he refuses to give up. Berkman points out that leveling up with a body like Hanbin's should be easy. He had been searching for someone built just like him, and now that he's found the perfect candidate, he invites Hanbin into his party. Berkman, a level 25 tank, assumes Hanbin is low only because of inexperience, not because of potential. He even remarks that if Hanbin is truly another worlder, his growth rate will skyrocket, meaning he won't remain in their party for long. Onrest City thrives because of dungeons and monsters. The economy revolves around hunters who bring back monster parts, which are then crafted into goods and traded. There are two primary hunting grounds near the city, the Eifin Plains dungeon and the southern entrance of the Sat Forest. Small villages sit near the forest, but since monsters rarely leave the trees, subjugation quests there are uncommon. Recently, however, monsters have begun attacking the outskirts, prompting many hunters to join extermination missions. Not long after, Berkman and his party confront a Devolk, a hulking monster native to the Sat forest. Though slow, Devolks possess crushing grips strong enough to shatter stone and rely on their sheer bulk for devastating strikes. Berkman, hailed as the strongest tank in Onres, blocks its pincer attack, halting its advance. This gives his teammate Amber Bonnet, a level 21 spearman, an opening to strike. After saving him, Amber teases Berkman for being pushed back, joking that he should retire. But when she notices a deep wound on his arm, her worry replaces the teasing. Berkman downplays it, acting calm and composed, which only makes Amber blush. Their moment is interrupted as his younger sister Erwin, the party's healer, rushes over to restore him. Suddenly, another Devolk lunges at her from behind. Before it can strike, Hubert Crutalis, their rear supporter, saves her with a fiery blow called Firehammer. Berkman's team proves why they are regarded as Onres's most reliable hunters, balanced, coordinated, and capable in both offense and defense. Hanbin, however, has been relegated to the role of porter. While the others battle, he stands aside, carrying supplies and waiting. Though left out of the fight, the party is fair enough to split profits evenly. As he waits for the combat to end, Lord Devolk, a level 25 variant, suddenly notices him. Without hesitation, Hanbin eliminates it instantly with a stone bullet. Yet the system grants him no experience. The monster's level is too low. Annoyed, he considers asking to face stronger enemies next time. When the hunt concludes, Berkman's group begins gathering valuable parts from the slain Devolks. Erwin happily finds a magic stone worth 15x and shows it off to her brother. Hanbin watches in fascination. Once, such a gruesome scene would have made him sick, but after years of carving up hell dogs, it hardly phases him. To everyone's surprise, he sorts and organizes the harvested goods with incredible speed, leaving the party stunned. When asked how he's so skilled, he casually reveals that he's been doing this kind of labor for 20 years, despite being only 24 years old. The party is shocked. Berkman and the others ask about his past, and Hanbin explains he was kidnapped 2 decades ago and no longer remembers his parents' faces. Berkman places a hand on his shoulder and declares that from now on, Hanbin is family. Moved, the others comfort him as well, and Hanbin realizes these people are genuinely kind. Grateful, he thanks Berkman for giving a low-level hunter like him a place. But then Berkman drops a surprising statement: level doesn't actually matter. He himself has been stuck at level 25 for 5 years. Hanbin is stunned, unable to understand. Berkman is already a level 25 hunter. Erwin explains that high-level monsters don't exist on the surface. Only dungeons contain such foes. Amber adds that their party has no reason to take on dungeon challenges, so they will likely never advance further. Completely shaken, Hanbin excuses himself to practice his sword, while Erwin quietly watches, her heart weighed down with unease. Haunted by the thought that everyone suspects him of being an otherworlder, Hanbin distances himself from the group. Concerned, Hubert follows after him, worried about leaving him alone when monsters could appear at any moment. Berkman agrees with the idea, knowing the forest is unpredictable. Hubert searches for him among the trees but finds no trace. Meanwhile, Hanbin wanders the forest restlessly, desperate to find monsters worth experience. Yet every creature he passes is low level. He recalls Effer's warning that the Sat forest holds few strong monsters, and now, after exploring it himself, he realizes she was right. It makes sense why enemies on Effer's level never granted him much experience. Just as he is about to leave, a strange howling echoes through the forest. The sound is unlike anything he's heard from ordinary beasts. Excited, he rushes toward it, hoping this might finally be a monster that can help him level up. Bursting through the trees, he prepares for battle, only to find someone else instead. A young man with orange hair, stripped bare in the forest. Hanbin quickly recognizes him. Ice, the mage from Lauda's party. Confused, he wonders why the mage is naked in Sat Forest, and where the monster making that sound could have gone. Embarrassed, he apologizes and turns to leave, but Ice stops him, suspicious of why a mere level 5 swordsman would be here. Hanbin explains that he heard the loud howl and thought it was a strong monster. He tries to excuse himself by saying he planned to call his party, but Ace presses harder, demanding an honest answer. He even threatens him with magic if he doesn't reveal the truth. Hanbin grows tense and grips his sword, angered at being treated with such suspicion. He lashes out, asking why Icy is doing this and whether Lauda put him up to it. To him, the mage is simply looking down on him like the rest of Lauda's arrogant party. Realizing he went too far, Isa softens his tone, admitting his words were harsher than intended. Just as the situation begins to settle, Lauda himself appears, his face twisted with fury. He accuses Hanbin of humiliating Siguri and now daring to lay hands on his female party member. Ise tries to explain it's a misunderstanding, but Lauda doesn't care. Preparing his stance, he radiates killing intent, clearly ready to unleash a sword technique. Hanbin and Ise both ignore his tantrum, which only infuriates him further. Enraged, Lauda unleashes his Thunder Lightning Sword, intending to kill Hanbin outright. Not wanting to escalate the conflict, Hanbin bows in apology, but this only leaves him exposed. The strike lands across his back, detonating in a violent explosion. Later, Erwin treats Lauda's injuries while Berkman assures Hanbin the incident wasn't his fault. But Hanbin knows this wound is beyond forgiveness, an accident no apology can undo. Erwin confirms that Lauda's life is no longer in danger thanks to Hanbin, bringing him to her quickly. Yet there is another problem, one that silences the entire group. Lauda had taken a devastating blow to his privates. It's an injury no one can comfort him for. The next morning, Ace escorted the broken hunter back to Onrest City. Afterward, Hanbin learned the truth about Ace's gender and found himself unable to face the mage easily again. As for the strange monster howl, it was never found, and Hanbin soon forgot about it during the 3 months he spent with Berkman's party. At present, Berkman's group camps at the edge of Savatha Forest, only to be shocked with the news that Lauda has entered a dungeon alone. Amber remarks that attempting such a thing at his level is suicide. Hanbin is surprised, believing Lauda's level to be high enough to handle it. Amber explains that Berkman and his group have grown strong by hunting native monsters, creatures they relied on to survive, but that isn't the same as dungeon monsters. Hanbin recalls Efer and Lord Devolk, unique monsters that challenged him in ways ordinary beasts never could. He wonders just how different dungeon monsters truly are. Amber reveals the truth. They are not creatures of this world at all. They are spawned by the dungeons themselves, creations of the demon god Ormlaus, and inside those dark domains, it is common to encounter monsters above level 30, or even far beyond. Hanbin believes that if dungeon monsters really are level 30 or higher, then they could finally help him gain meaningful experience. Determined, he decides to enter a dungeon, even if it means sneaking in. Berkman warns him, however, that monsters aren't the only threat. Otherworlders often hunt there in secret as well. Hanbin recalls that dungeon entry screenings are strict, and for a moment considers abandoning the idea. But Berkman adds something crucial. Lauda might be searching for a healing artifact. The tank explains that dungeons contain special sources, artifacts of countless forms, each with unique abilities. According to rumors, one artifact can heal any kind of wound. Berkman suspects Lauda is risking everything to find it. To Hanbin, dungeons and artifacts sound like a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. They may be his only real chance at progress. As night falls, Berkman extinguishes the lights, uneasy about the growing number of monsters creeping out of Sat Forest. He prays it isn't a bad omen. When the camp falls silent, Hanbin sneaks out and heads alone into the dense Satata Forest. The deeper he goes, the more unsettling it feels. A place suited for giant, terrifying monsters. For a moment, he thinks about visiting Efer, but instead stumbles across something far more dangerous. A Tatiro, a level 31 dungeon monster. Its entire body is covered in a hard carapace that nullifies sword attacks, though it is weak to magic. Hanbin knows this type is the worst possible match for him. Before he can retreat, another Tatiro appears. To his shock, the creatures begin speaking in broken, human-like language. They boast that blades cannot harm them and that they feed on sword-bearers. Yet, Hanbin advances with unshaken confidence, terrifying the monsters. When one flees, he chases it down. The Tatiro attempts to use a portal hidden beneath a tree, an entrance leading directly to the Eifin Plains dungeon. Hanbin tears the tree from the earth as if it were nothing but a weed. He wonders if dungeon monsters escaping through these portals are forcing native beasts out of their territories. Confused, he presses the Tatiro for answers about who created the portal. The monster insists it doesn't know, only that no one is allowed to enter, as per its master's orders. Hanbin, intrigued, orders the Tatiro to guard the portal so its master won't discover what he's about to do. Then, without hesitation, he leaps inside. As the portal closes, the monster hurriedly buries it with dirt. Inside the dungeon, a group of hunters is struggling against a pack of Tatiros. A boy swings an axe that fails to pierce their shells, while a mage girl is pinned and barely holding on. She casts a flash spell, blinding both the monster and her own ally. Half blind, the boy calls for Runol, their healer, only to realize he's already dead. Desperate, he screams for help as the mage Alicia is nearly crushed. At the last moment, Lauda appears. With blinding speed, he decapitates the Tatiro. The boy stares in awe. Earlier, he had tried the same attack but failed because the Tatiro defended its head with its blade-like arms. The opening at the neck is tiny, but Lauda forced its arms down before striking cleanly, a technique only possible for a dual-wielding magic swordsman. The young hunter recognizes him immediately, calling out Lauda's name with admiration. He recalls hearing stories of the prideful swordsman venturing into the dungeon months ago and praises his bravery. But the truth is far different. Lauda has been trapped inside the dungeon for 70 long days. He remembers getting drunk at a tavern in Unrest City, only to wake up here with no memory of how he entered. For weeks, he hadn't seen another living person. Now, finally, there was hope of escape. Alicia, still recovering, remembers that Lauda had been seeking a healing artifact. Seeing the injury on her leg, he shows concern, but she assures him she will manage. For the first time in months, Lauda feels like he might finally return home. Lauda notices the bleeding has finally stopped. To help further, he pulls out a healing potion, an extremely rare find, and hands it casually to Alicia. She briefly wonders if he's trying to flirt with her, but he quickly dismisses the thought, insisting he would never do such a thing. He explains that the potion is useless for his own injury, but vital for her recovery. If she isn't healed, it will be difficult for them to escape. Alicia silently promises herself that she'll repay this debt once they leave the dungeon. Lauda then instructs the group to retreat. Alicia hesitates, asking if they're really turning back after coming this far just because of her. She introduces herself firmly as a hunter, not wanting him to look down on her. But Lauda's focus is elsewhere. His only real concern is getting out of the dungeon alive. In truth, he is suffering from irritable bowel syndrome and can't endure much longer. Suddenly, the ground begins to shake violently. The boy assumes it's an earthquake, but Alicia reminds him that dungeons exist in a separate dimension. Earthquakes don't happen here. Alarmed, Lauda orders them to take the side passage immediately, bracing himself for whatever is causing the tremors. He refuses to show weakness in front of a woman, even if it costs him his life. The sound of countless monsters rushing toward them echoes through the cavern. Alicia is horrified, wondering how Lauda could possibly face so many. But the prideful hunter urges them to flee. The boy lifts Alicia into his arms and sprints toward the exit. Alicia wants to fight alongside Lauda, but the boy insists that staying will only slow him down. They must trust his sacrifice. Lauda, left behind, starts sweating. He didn't expect the boy to leave as well. Still, he forces himself to stay fired up, reminding himself that he leveled up while surviving in the dungeon and should be able to handle a few Tatiros. Yet when a massive horde of them charges, he panics and bolts. To his surprise, the Tatiros don't harm him. They rush past, chanting strange words like run and danger. Confused, Lauda wonders what could have frightened them so badly. Elsewhere in the dungeon, Hanbin is the cause. Surrounded by Tatiros, he toys with them easily. He had high expectations for the dungeon, but to his disappointment, none of these fights grant him any experience. He restrains his strength for fear of collapsing the cavern, just as he once did when training under Berkman. The Tatiros, terrified, scatter to escape him, with some even sacrificing themselves to protect the others. When the dust settles, Hanbin discovers an artifact, a fireball bracelet. Overjoyed, he questions why such an item isn't guarded by a boss. In truth, he had unknowingly already slain the level 40 Tatiro king. Inspecting the bracelet, he finds it is a mid-source artifact. The guideline explains its function. The wearer can cast fireball magic simply by shouting, "Fireball." It has 30 charges left. Excited, Hanbin takes it immediately, thinking it's every man's dream to wield such power. But when he tries it, nothing happens. The system informs him that only hunters at level 31 or above can use it. Frustrated, he calls it trash. He can't even sell it. No one would believe a level 5 had found such a treasure. Artifacts are rare honors for hunters, trophies proving their triumph over dungeons. Yet, as Hanbin reflects, many who claimed one met their downfall because of the greed and pride that followed. Still, he keeps it and presses on. He finds a passage leading toward the dungeon's central chamber, the boss room. Though his plan was only to explore briefly and return before Berkman wakes, curiosity gets the better of him. Step by step, he enters deeper into the heart of the dungeon. Hanbin steps into the boss's chamber, hoping the dungeon master will finally appear so he can gain experience and return. But to his surprise, the room is empty. No monsters, no guards, only the magic source sitting unattended. Suspicious, he begins shouting, taunting whatever may be hiding. He loudly declares that he's taking the artifact, hoping to draw something out. His gamble works. Suddenly, thick tentacles lash out, wrapping around his arms. He looks up to see the true boss, the Tentacle Beholder, a level 45 dungeon monster. Hanbin assumes this might finally give him the experience he needs, but before he can act, his arms and legs are completely restrained. In this position, a single attack could finish him. Just then, the door creaks open and Lauda enters. Hanbin breaks into a cold sweat. If Lauda sees him here, his cover could be blown. Panicked, he tries to think of an excuse but can't. Meanwhile, Lauda misunderstands the situation entirely. Seeing Hanbin bound, he assumes the Tentacle Beholder is imitating him, creating a false form to exploit weakness and fear. Convinced the monster is impersonating Hanbin, he warns it not to use such cheap tricks. Realizing his chance, Hanbin plays along, pretending to be the dungeon boss. Lauda, furious, charges. The Tentacle Beholder, with its all-directional body and hyperspeed tentacles, counters easily, striking at blind spots. Without revealing his strength, Hanbin secretly deflects attacks aimed at Lauda, saving him without the swordsman even realizing it. But in the chaos, Hanbin nearly suffers a fatal accident. Lauda's blade swings dangerously close to his lower half. To protect his future children, he leaps, accidentally launching himself so hard that the boss is smashed into the ceiling. Instead of relief, Hanbin is more concerned about his pants tearing than his near miss. To him, the dungeon boss feels disappointingly weak. Meanwhile, Lauda spirals into madness. Blinded by rage, he slashes wildly, believing the monster Hanbin has ruined his life and stolen everything from him, even eyes. In his frenzy, he falls under the control of the Tentacle Beholder, which uses him as a puppet to speak. The boss, livid at Hanbin for humiliating it, declares that he'll never strike down his own companion. Hanbin mocks the monster, offering to hand Lauda over in exchange for experience. The Tentacle Beholder changes its plan. Instead of using Lauda as dungeon fertilizer, it declares him a future mid-boss. First, it vows to slaughter all humans, and Lauda will be the appetizer. Among dungeon bosses, the Tentacle Beholder is one of the most troublesome, not for raw power, but for its cunning intelligence and ability to parasitize humans. Once captured, hosts gain extraordinary powers, but their will is devoured. The Beholder attempts to shatter Hanbin's resolve, sneering, "No matter how strong he is still just a human. He can pretend all he wants, but he'll never strike down his own ally." But suddenly, the Beholder loses control of Lauda. Its manipulation crumbles as the swordsman lowers his weapon. Panic grips the monster. Realizing too late that Hanbin is far beyond what it imagined, someone claiming to be level 45 yet immeasurably stronger, it collapses in despair. Hanbin, meanwhile, wonders whether the system will once again tell him the boss was too weak to give experience. Half distracted, he even thinks about heading back to Sat Forest to find something more worthwhile. The Tentacle Beholder, in its final moments, senses that this foe is no ordinary human. Even dying, it desperately tries to warn someone, convinced Hanbin's very presence makes opening portals meaningless. With a final strike, Hanbin obliterates the monster completely. The dungeon dissolves around him, and before leaving, he receives his reward, an unbelievable 54.5 billion in gains. Morning arrives, and Berkman is already stretching when Erwin notices Hanbin is nowhere to be found. The tank explains that Hanbin was gone when he woke up. Worried, Erwin fears he may have gone back into the forest alone. Just then, Hanbin returns carrying a monster corpse, startling her. She scolds him for disappearing without telling anyone, and though he apologizes, he keeps quiet about what really happened. Only moments earlier, he had received the reward for slaying the Tentacle Beholder, 113,240 experience points. He remembers how Helldogs had only given him 258 each. To reach level 5 from level 4 required 1,000 experience, and reaching level 6 took 2,200. With over 100,000 experience, he imagines what level he might reach now. But his excitement vanishes when the guidelines reveal the truth. He needs 54.5 billion more experience to reach level 6. Shocked, he freezes, realizing that leveling up might be completely impossible. For the next week, Berkman's party scours the forest, but no monsters appear. With nothing else to hunt, they decide to return to Onrest City earlier than planned. At the city gates, the carriage is halted by guards. The coachman explains they are transporting for the Hunters Guild, but the guard demands a pass. When the coachman admits he doesn't have one, the guard refuses entry. Angered, the old man yells that he's been doing this job longer than the guard has been alive, but the guard insists it's a direct order from above. Hanbin recalls that anyone with the guild's mark should be allowed through, but the guards soon realize Berkman's party has been gone for 3 months and is unaware of recent events. When Berkman removes his mask, the lead guard Goleman immediately recognizes him and greets him warmly. Surprised Berkman hasn't heard, Goleman explains that the guild had issued an emergency recall for all hunters. The reason? The Eifin Plains dungeon has been cleared. Though they are allowed into the city, Hanbin feels uneasy. He never took the dungeon's magic source, the dragon's core. Since the dungeon has collapsed, someone else must have taken it. But who? And how? The details remain a mystery. Hubert explains that clearing a dungeon is the highest honor for hunters, but it's usually otherworlders who keep it hidden. Amber adds bitterly that it may also be the work of the Heresy Inquisitors, agents of the Brotherhood tasked with finding and executing otherworlders. Before killing, they torture indiscriminately, especially targeting hunters over level 20. Hanbin is shocked, pointing out that both Berkman and Amber are over 20 themselves. Hubert admits it's true, which is why so many hunters have already fled the city. Hanbin realizes just how hated and hunted otherworlders are. Berkman, however, chooses to set the matter aside. For now, they should complete their business. After all, their weeks of camping and fighting should count for something. First, they need to trade in their magic stones. He assigns Hanbin the task of selling all the monster materials, planning a celebration later for Hanbin's first completed mission. Berkman suggests Amber accompany him, but Hanbin insists on going alone. He already knows where Bolton's shop is. Amber warns him he doesn't even know the market price, but Berkman decides to trust him. At Bolton's store, however, Hanbin faces rejection. Bolton refuses to buy magic stones from Berkman's party, not wanting to risk attracting the Heresy Inquisitors. The shopkeeper laments that his business once thrived thanks to the dungeon, but now everything is ruined. Hanbin pleads with him to help, offering to sell at just a quarter of their real value. But Bolton, irritated, refuses outright. No matter the price, he won't accept in such dangerous times. Suddenly, the door opens. A robed member of the Brotherhood enters, startling Bolton. Calmly, the man says he'll wait for his turn. Hanbin tries to check his level, but to his shock, it doesn't appear. The Brotherhood member smirks as he steps closer, remarking with unsettling interest, "What's wrong? Can't see my level?"